Yes, I'm Richard Hubbard, and I'm the new Chief Executive Officer of Crogga Limited.
And I suppose tell us a bit about yourself. First of all, you've got massive experience in
Yes,
the
so
energy
I'm a
industry.
kind of career geologist, and I worked for BP for many years, but I've done many other things too. So I've spent many years working around the world in different places, trying to find and develop oil and gas fields.
And while people may not be that familiar with you, you're fairly familiar with the island. You've got roots
Yes.
from the island.
So my wife Tina, who's with me today, her mother's family come from Laxey. And Tina is her great grandfather was a Laxey miner.
Good. So just if we turn to the immediate thing of off Mackle Head out in
Yes,
the sea there, the company's put a statement out today saying that you intend to start drilling next
yes,
year. These are the exploratory wells.
yes.
How confident are you at this stage that there is something out there?
Well, firstly, just to say that this will be the first well drilled under the jurisdiction of the Isle of Man government. So that's a milestone. It is the first well. And then with regard to how confident we are, it's not a certainty, but I think it's pretty good. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here. And I know about it from my history of BP work. And there's only ever been one well drilled there, and it was 40 years ago, drilled by BP, and it found gas. So no one is doubting that it's found gas. But at the time, it was just not known how big it was, and the well really wasn't drilled in an optimum location. So what Crogga can do now is go and effectively re-drill that well in the right place. And if we find what we're looking for, it'll be a really nice commercial gas field. And it's fairly cheap to develop because it's in shallow water. There's 14 meters.
In terms of, with obviously the company wants us to go ahead, but there's been a lot of opposition on Ireland.
Yeah.
How does that? How do you believe it sits with the current?
Well, yes. Okay. Well, I'm glad you asked because we are, as a sort of global community, engaged in the energy transition. And I was pretty sure my next job would be straight into green energy. But I was asked by the directors of Crogga to come and have a go at this. And one has to sort of take a step back and realize that the transition is a process, not an event. You can't just switch over and say from today onwards everything is going to be green. And of course, the world has just gone through this horrible experience of the war, which is an awful thing. And then the consequence is the price shock of the gas. And so the paramount need for additional gas in friendly waters is clear to the whole world. And so if we are able to appraise and then develop what becomes a commercial gas field for the Isle of Man, it's as good as it can be because the carbon footprint is a lot lower. There's no transportation from the other side of the world or anything like that. And it is a transitionary business. So maybe it will have a 20-year supply and it will provide a really good boost for the island economy. And also Crogga has committed to supply gas for domestic use here in the island, capped at 80 pence per therm, which is very low compared to the price shock that occurred earlier this year when it went as high as £8.
I don't know how much position you're in to talk this because obviously we have a slightly different situation with the gas on the
Yeah,
island as opposed to
yeah,
electricity where it's
yeah.
taxpayer owned. The gas course isn't. So are you in discussions with Isle of Man Energy as they now are about how this would work? Because obviously that's the company that runs the gas system on
Well,
the island.
okay, so as with any of these oil and gas licenses, the oil company that's drilling for the natural gas, in our case, produces the gas and sells it at the wellhead.
Mm-hmm.
So our business is what's called the upstream end of it. And per se, the oil companies are not necessarily involved in the transportation or the distribution and sale of the gas. So Crogga, directly speaking, will hopefully become a producer, an upstream producer of natural gas. We certainly get involved in the processing of it as much as is required, but we're not in ourselves the utility company or even the industry that uses gas to produce a product. So we are strictly upstream.
But I suppose what people say is, how can you commit to giving low price gas to the Isle of Man if you're
Because
not at the
it's
delivery?
Kroger's gas at the point of sale, and we can decide who we sell it to.
Mm-hmm.
So we will sell whatever gas the island requires for domestic use, and we've given the guarantee to price cap it at 80 pence. But,
And in terms of the actual revenue that it could generate for the island, this will come through VAT and
yeah.
through I imagine there has been an initial purchase of the drilling rights to begin with.
Yes. So back in 2018, the Isle of Man government, through the Department of Infrastructure, awarded the so-called seaweed production license, that's the technical name, to Crogga Limited. And Crogga is 100% owner of the license. We don't own the mineral rights, that's always held by the state. But as the operator, we own the rights to produce and sell it. And then there's always a fiscal regime under which any oil company works, which splits the production revenues into what is referred to as the government take and to the net income for the oil company. And so that's a sort of a well-established procedure. And the island's government take will look very healthy in the balance books if we are successful. I have to tell you, we're not sure. We have to drill the well first to know that we've really got a commercial development on our hands. So I don't want to sit here today and tell you it's all signed, sealed, and delivered. It's absolutely not. We have to drill the well. But if we find what we're looking for, then it's, I think, financially very good news for the island as well as the Crogga shareholders.
You're technically a lot more knowledgeable of this than any of us that we're going to be, obviously. Could you just tell us what happens from when you start this process, which Crogga said they hope to start next year, to if there is production, what actually happens in that stage?
I can certainly do that, yes. So we're planning to drill this first well, which we refer to as the Independence Well. We thought that was a suitable name. And we will be trying to contract the rig in January or thereabouts. And we would like to start it, and the word that we use in the industry is to spud a well, which is to make a hole in the ground and start drilling down. And we'll spud it in the fourth quarter of 2023. And it will probably take 3 months to find out if we've got what we're looking for. And we truly don't know until we've drilled that well. And what we have to do is we take a physical core, so we can bring the rock, the gas-saturated rock, to the surface and look at it. We then run some electric logs to measure the rock properties, and then we conduct a short-term flow test to be sure that the gas will flow out of the ground at a rate that's going to sustain commercial development. So that's the one well. It's a 3-month interlude. If it's successful, then we would think about how best to develop the greater field area. And the scoping plan that we have calls for 12 wells and a 3D seismic. And at that point, seismic becomes essential because you need to know how far it is and where the limits are. And then the 12 wells would be sufficient to drain it. And it's quite ambitious, but we have a target to move to first production by 2026. That's 3 years between drilling the first well and commercial production.
I don't know if you're a gambling man, but in terms of 2026, where would you put the odds?
On what?
If there is gas down there,
Yes.
how likely do you see 2026 as being a time to start production?
Okay, we need everything to go nicely, smoothly for us, but I think it can. And as field developments go around the world, this is an easy one. We're sitting in shallow water, we're fairly close to shore, and it's an existing producing basin. So we're not in a frontier location. This for the oil industry is quite an easy thing to do.
If there is gas found and you can start production, what happens next? Where is it going to be fed into?
Okay, so we have to decide that, but the idea is to lay a pipeline to tie it back to a processing facility. And the obvious two options are either to bring it to the Isle of Man and build a new processing facility here, which would be somewhere north of Ramsey probably, or we tie it back through the Morecambe Bay facilities and use the big gas processing plant in Barrow, in Furness, known as the Rampside Terminal, and then we're just plugging straight into the infrastructure that's down there on the seabed, and that's probably the quicker option.
And in terms of the actual, towards the end of this lifelong, I know there's a briefing given recently where there's a government commitment for 2048. Things have to be sealed up and finished in terms of the government's climate target for 2050.
Yeah.
How certain can the company be that basically the taxpayer won't be left with a bill at the end of all this?
No. Well, it just does. It's not structured like that. The oil company is responsible for the funding and the financial consequences and the risks they're involved. So it isn't ever the responsibility of the government or the taxpayer of the Isle of Man.
And that includes the end.
Yes, the abandonment.
Mhm.
The abandonment is the responsibility of the operator.
Just want to turn back to green issues like that. There's a
Yeah.
commitment in this also around working around either with yourselves or with a developer of a wind farm in the same area.
Yes. Yeah.
What stage are we out of that? Is there anything you can tell us about that yet?
Well, not any hard facts that I know, but in principle, we are on board completely with doing that. We would like to see wind farm development as widespread as needed and required. And we can develop a gas field quite comfortably within such an area. Clearly, you have to get the planning sequencing right, but so long as we're working together, it's not a problem.
Obviously, this is quite a divisive topic on Ireland. Without
Yeah.
sort of trying to antagonise anybody, what would you say to people who are concerned about this, or the fact that who argue we shouldn't be doing this, we shouldn't be going for
Well,
fossil
yes,
fuels?
of course, and I'm sort of almost one of them, to tell you the truth, because I believe entirely in the energy transition. However, as I've said earlier, it's a process, it's not an event. And for the foreseeable future, the Isle of Man, like everywhere else, is going to be using natural gas. So where do you want your gas to come from? You can either ship it across the ocean in an LNG carrier, or you can have something that's produced locally, and therefore the carbon footprint of anything produced in Isle of Man waters is significantly lower. So in moving towards a zero carbon economy, it helps a lot to have a local supply of natural gas. But it isn't the be all and the end all, it's a transitionary fuel towards a green energy future.